It's going to be a big summer for Real Madrid and Xabi Alonso after their recent humiliation against PSG. Lots of question marks are being asked about this squad and who should stay or go. We've got the full squad list in front of us today. It's the classic keep, sell, loan or contract exit. You know how this works. Let's get into it. We'll start with Thibaut Courtois. I think the goalkeeping situation at Madrid is pretty easy, right? Even his performances at the Club World Cup, some of the monumental saves he was making at 33 years old, he's a clear keep. It's just about keeping him fit, really. Lunin, who played 7 times last season in La Liga, the year before when Courtois had his major injury, played even more minutes than that, recently signed that contract extension until 2030. There has been rumours about his future. I expect him to stay at the club this summer, and in the long term, maybe Madrid are eyeing him to take that number 1 jersey. Fran Gonzalez, they need a third choice goalkeeper. Of course, he did appear for them in La Liga last season once, and he's still only 20. I think there are fairly high hopes for him at the club. Okay, this is where it starts to get interesting, the outfield players. The right-back situation immediately stands out, doesn't it? Because Dani Carvajal is still at the club. He's coming off the back of a horrendous injury that he suffered. Obviously, PSG was his comeback game. He's had ACL problems, MCL problems. And at his age, it's not easy to recover from that. When he wasn't in the side last season, I think you really noticed a difference on that right-hand flank. Just the 7 starts prior to that injury. Obviously, all of his data points towards the fact he is still a very solid defender. Not going to be the biggest contributor in the final third, but I think his experience is key to this Xabi Alonso squad unit. He has a contract that's up in 2026 as well, though. So, do they extend it? Do they decide to keep him? Do they try and extend it during the season? There are a few question marks about Dani Carvajal coming off the back of such a serious injury. But as things stand now, I think you need his leadership and experience in this squad. Trent is an obvious keep. He's only just arrived at the club. Madrid fans, I am interested to hear what you made of Trent over the Club World Cup. I think he grew into the position and you could see some of his creativity, particularly with those whip crosses towards Gonzalo Garcia, who we're going to talk about in detail later, the forwards at Madrid. There's so many question marks about. I don't think there's a question about Trent, though. He's going to be the starting right back. The idea of having Carvajal to learn from, the experience to play behind him, to play alongside him and rotate in and out the side is really nice. I like these two as a combination. Lucas Vazquez, of course, final game was against PSG, contract exit. He is leaving the club. What a career he's had at Madrid. 400 appearances for the club. 5 times Champions League winner. I think he's won La Liga 4 times as well. So underrated, so versatile. Never the best player, but when he was called upon, he did a job and he bled for that Madrid shirt. Let's chat centre-backs, because there was big chat after that PSG shambles, wasn't there? Particularly about the future of Rudiger and Asensio. Amongst the Real Madrid communities, they took a pounding. We'll come on to them in a little bit. We'll start with David Alaba, who, you know, has had horrendous injury problems himself, a bit like Carvajal. Coming up to the Christmas period, he'd missed 400 consecutive days of football. Even when he was back, it was spits and starts, wasn't it? 600 minutes. At the end of June, he picked up yet another thigh injury. It's just so sad how David Alaba is going out, and I think potentially he would go out if it was my decision. He's under contract until 2026, so this is the last window you're going to get any money for him. If you can get money for him, does anybody buy David Alaba with the current injury situation? Especially now he's 33 years old and the other defensive options that Madrid have on their books are just ahead of him in this pecking order right now. Take, for instance, Dean Howson, who I thought was probably Real Madrid's best player at the Club World Cup alongside Gonzalo Garcia, but he looks already like their best centre-back. The fact he's able to come in from Bournemouth at his age so seamlessly is remarkable and proves out what an elite level talent he is. His on-the-ball ability is fantastic, but also what's really underrated about Dean Howson is his ability to step in front of forwards, win the ball high up the pitch. His interceptions are ridiculous. In 2025, the most interceptions of any player in the Premier League. So he wants to step out the line, but he's calm and composed and can progress it for his passing and carrying. Overall, Madrid have got one of the best young centre-backs in world football, and he is going to be a mainstay for this side for years. He's crucial to this Xabi Alonso system already. Rudiger, I think you probably would have said was going to be crucial to this Xabi Alonso system as well, but there are a few question marks to be answered here. 32 years old, out of contract in 2026, and at times his rashness, particularly on the ball, isn't particularly conducive of how Alonso wants his centre-backs to operate. Last season, he made 26 La Liga starts, and I think as a 1v1 defender, he's hard to beat. But on the ball and concentration-wise, it does feel like he's regressed a little bit. He's got a little bit sloppy. I'm going to say you keep him for one more season, but the interest in Saudi is there. If Saudi came in with a big bid for Antonio Rudiger, there must be a temptation, given his age, given his contractual status, to say, yeah, we could have a look at this and look to reinvest in a player like Ibu Konate. What you're noticing as you go through this Madrid squad, particularly at the back, there's a lot of injury-prone players. You know, Carvajal, David Alaba, Rudiger's had injury issues. And that brings us to Militao, whose knees seem like they're buckled. He's played very little football over the last 2 seasons. Double ACL injuries, a combined 1,300 minutes of football across those last 2 campaigns, but also, I think what you saw against PSG, even in very limited minutes when he came on, is he still has the ability to be a world-class centre-back. His athleticism, his game reading, his intelligence are all still really good. It just feels like his body's let him down. If it was a shootout between who to keep between Militao and Rudiger, I would side with Militao despite the fact he's got those injury problems. And when you combine that with the fact, we're going to talk about Raul Asensio a little bit later on, that the defensive options feel quite limited. You can see why Ibu Konate is so intriguing to Florentino Perez, be it next summer on a free transfer or this summer with a significant fee. I'm going to say Militao stays. I think he does have a future under Xabi Alonso. If he can stay fit, he is still one of the best centre-backs in Europe. Jacobo Ramon, of course, went to the Club World Cup. He's only 20 years old, but it does feel like they are progressing with that deal with Como. Of course, we saw Nico Paz go to Como. Massive success story for a fairly cheap fee, but with that buyback clause, I think that's probably what they're going to look to put into Ramon's deal as well. I expect that is going to happen. Likewise, Aguado looks like he is going to be allowed to leave the club. Borussia Dortmund bid 6 million euros. That was knocked back. Real Madrid want 10 million euros. And they want the buyback clause. What you see with a lot of Madrid youngsters, and they've done this over the last few years under Florentino Perez, is a willingness to sell them with buyback clauses or with significant sell-on clauses, be that 40 or 50%. I think Aguado is going to be another one of those. He's going to end up at Dortmund. That brings us to Asensio, who had an absolute howler against PSG, and there are still parts of his game I'm a little bit puzzled by. Like, I think there is an excellent defender in there somewhere, but he can be really sloppy at times. How high his ceiling is remains a debate. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about Asensio. How high is his ceiling? If he wasn't playing for Madrid, would we be talking about him in the same way we are? I don't want to keep bringing it back to Club World Cup, but that's what Xabi Alonso would have seen so far. And in those 3 matches we saw from our Asensio, he was sent off, wasn't he? He gave the penalty away. He had 2 errors leading to goals. I think there is a rashness to his game. Now, his contract was expiring in 2026, but reportedly he has signed the extension until 2031 with a $1 billion buyout clause. Fine. I would keep him because I do think he has a future at Madrid, but whether or not I see him as the future of Madrid's centre-back pairing alongside Howson, I think there's a couple of question marks. Yusuf, another one of the youngsters, seems like he's going out. Seems like a permanent deal has pretty much been agreed with Alaves. And that leaves Fran Garcia and Ferland Mendy as the 2 left-back options. But Alvaro Fernandez is joining the club from Benfica. So which of these 2 is going to go? Are they going to operate with 3 left-backs? Fran Garcia was clearly the favoured option by Xabi Alonso at the Club World Cup because of Ferland Mendy's injury problems. And for me, Fran Garcia is a fine backup. Is Alvaro going to be the starting left-back for Madrid this season? It feels like that is very possible. Fran Garcia is still only 25 years old, but his contract is up in 2027. And at the Club World Cup, he put up more minutes than any other Madrid player. So I think Xabi Alonso has started with a lot of trust in him. Whether or not that remains when other options become available, I'm not too sure. We haven't seen him as a consistent performer at Madrid. And I say that despite the fact he started 24 games in La Liga last season. I still don't think Madrid fans see Fran Garcia as the future of the left-back role, whereas Alvaro potentially arriving changes that picture. As for Ferland Mendy, I think he's out until October. That is a long old time, isn't it? Given he's 30 years old now. Weirdly, he signed that contract extension in 2024, September of 2024, didn't he? That season 3 till 2027. So he is under contract for the same amount of time as Fran Garcia, but I just struggle to see him playing consistently for Madrid again. He had 4 separate injuries in 24-25. It feels like his body is letting him down. And again, the picture is being built up of an injury-ridden and consistently injury-prone backline at Madrid. Players have got to be brought in that can play more consistent football. I know that Ibu Konate is top of the list for Madrid, and rightly so, a fantastic defender, but even his injury record is pretty checkered over the last few years. I'm going to put Ferland Mendy in the sell category. Who buys him? Because he's out to October. I don't know. Eduardo Camavinga hopefully is going to have a huge season under Xabi Alonso. I'm definitely going to put him in the keep column. I think he is a sensational footballer when he's fit, which is not a lot of the time. He's had plenty of injury problems, but he's also had selection issues under Carlo, hasn't he? Carlo's utilised him at left back, defensive midfield, at times a more advanced 8. But he's never started more than 21 games in a domestic league season for Madrid since he's been there. 1,000 league minutes last year. Not enough for a player of his calibre. He's still very young, and I do think his athleticism is going to be key to how Xabi Alonso wants to play. I cannot see Arda Guler playing in that 3-man midfield. I just can't see it next season. I know that he did last night against PSG, but I think it's just so easily exposable. We'll talk about Arda in a little bit. I would rather see Camavinga play in that role. I can imagine Camavinga playing in that role, despite the fact he doesn't really have the game control elements we've seen from Madrid midfielders playing that position in recent years, like Modric, like Toni Kroos. And I think that's probably a profile that's missing from the Madrid squad. Tchouameni started a lot of games at the Club World Cup. That's the only pool of evidence we've got so far on a Xabi Alonso. So I will say keep. Played an interesting role, didn't he? It was a central midfielder, but at times it allowed him to play as part of this centre-back unit, this sort of hybrid 4-back, 3-back system that we saw Xabi Alonso trying at times. I like Tchouameni. He's a game controller, and clearly so does Xabi Alonso. He spoke about that in the post-game, how he controls the tempo of the side. There is still more to come from him, surely. I don't think we've seen Tchouameni at his best in a Madrid shirt yet. Last season, he put up the 3rd most line-breaking passes of any player in La Liga, and he's going to need to do that an awful lot more. Like I said, that profile I think is missing. Toni Kroos-style game controller. Is that going to be Tchouameni? Madrid fans, let me know what you think about that. Does Tchouameni need to be partnered with somebody like that? Or is he the future in that role? Jude Bellingham, certainly going to be in the keep column. I think his athleticism is huge for Madrid, as is his attitude and leadership. Let's not forget he's been playing with a dislocated shoulder for months that's required surgery. He's been playing through the pain. He's now going to be out for 3 months while he recovers and has surgery on that issue. So he's been playing injured, and he's been playing a differing role. You know, when we first saw him at Madrid, it was extremely advanced. It was basically a striker. Now he's been asked to drop back. I think Xabi Alonso wants to utilise him in the 10. But he's so versatile, I think he's going to be a key component wherever he plays. Of course, Luka Modric has left the club. He's going to be joining AC Milan. Got to go down as one of their greatest ever players. I just can't wait to see him in Italy. I think he could prolong his career even more there. Fede Valverde, one of the first names, if not really the first name on the team sheet. The midfield options at Madrid are fantastic. Camavinga, Tchouameni, Jude Bellingham, Fede Valverde. I do still think they need one more. A game controller like Fede Valverde, very physical, wants to do everything, be everywhere. His progressive pass numbers, his carrying ability are all off the charts. A great shooter from range. So's Jude Bellingham, all action. Camavinga, all action. Tchouameni trying to develop into a tempo setter. But I just want to see somebody put the foot on the ball, Luka Modric style, Toni Kroos style, slow the game down a bit at times. Some might say that could be Dani Ceballos. Obviously very calm and composed in possession, not as athletic as some of the other players we're talking about in this Madrid side. He's under contract till 2027, but no, I don't think I see a future for him in this Xabi Alonso midfield. I think there is a really good player in there that somebody could pick up. Another side in Spain, maybe a side in Italy, could get an excellent progressive passer here. He's in the top 2 percentile of midfielders for progressive passes per 90. His pass completion rate is excellent. His long passing ability is superb. I just don't think he has the ground coverage required. Chema Andres is heavily linked with Levante after his Club World Cup stints. I think a lot of Madrid fans are hoping that's on loan. There is a bit of chat. It could be a permanent with a buyback clause, but he's highly thought of too. Mario Martin is entered the final year of his contract. Of course, he is on the verge of joining Getafe. Let's talk about Arda Guler. then, and his future. I mentioned him earlier, how we see him fitting within this system. Where is he going to play in this Xabi Alonso unit, be it in the 4 in midfield, the 3, when he's playing in this hybrid role? I liken him a little bit, bear with me here, to Harvey Elliott. I think Harvey Elliott is a huge talent, maybe not as talented as Arda Guler, but positionally and physically, I think suffers from similar sort of issues in that he doesn't necessarily have the pace and power to be an out-and-out right winger, or the pace and power to be a central midfielder. He wants to operate in between the lines. He's extremely technically gifted, but as we saw against PSG when Xabi tried to use him in the midfield 3, I just think he gets run over. I don't think he knows the role well enough. I've heard the talk amongst Madrid fans and the Madrid press about him being transitioned into a midfielder to play a Toni Kroos style role. I'll be honest, I don't see it. I think he's better suited in forward areas, playing in between the lines, just on the edge of the box, looking to be creative, put those wicked balls in, unbelievable shots from distance. The midfield role puzzles me. Last season it was 7 goal involvements in 1,200 minutes. He's definitely going to be a keep. Like, there's a bit of chat, isn't there, that he could be sold. Other teams from the Premier League, from Italy are interested in him, from Germany. But I think Xabi Alonso really rates him, and rightly so. He's a fabulous player. I'm just a bit confused about the role. Victor Munoz is joining Osasuna, has already joined Osasuna. Again, not sure if that's going to be a loan or a permanent, but I think it's probably going to be a permanent with a buyback or a sell-on fee included, as with plenty of these Madrid youngsters. Here we go then, into the real meat, because the forward line, there's huge question marks. It can't be just me that thinks there is massive issues in this Madrid forward line. It reminds me of the PSG forward line that never really worked. It's packed full of stars, but the balance isn't right. Let's start with Rodrygo then, who it feels like is going to leave the club. He's going to be sold to the tune of 80 million, 90 million. And I think it's the wrong decision. I'll be honest, I'm going to say that. I think Madrid are making a mistake here, selling Rodrygo to try and appease Vinicius and Mbappe, who I don't think work in the same side. Firstly, Rodrygo is still only 24 years old, is far more selfless than either Vinny or Mbappe, a little bit more versatile as well. Yes, he's played predominantly on the right, but his performances on the left have been excellent. He's put up more XG per 90 playing on the left than he has on the right. And the fact he wasn't brought on at all against PSG, we saw Lucas Vazquez coming on ahead of him. He hasn't started in any of their last 5 Club World Cup matches, proves to me that is a technical decision. Xabi Alonso, be it his position, what he's seen in training, his attitude, something isn't right there. And whoever gets Rodrygo, because I do believe he's going to be sold, I think he's going to get an absolute demon. I am going to predict he goes to Chelsea. I think Arsenal signed Madueke and Eze, and Chelsea put that Madueke fund, 50 million, towards Rodrygo. They need that left winger. Obviously, Jamie Gittins has joined the club, but Rodrygo's a far more established name. Still fits in with the mould of younger signings if you're Blueco with a long-term future and possible sell-on value. He's only 24 years old. I think 70-80 million for Rodrygo is great value. And I just think balance-wise and for the flow of the team, Madrid need more Rodrigos and less Vinicius and Mbappes. So let's talk about Vinicius, because his contract is up in 2027. And there is huge interest from Saudi Arabia in him. Now, he's clearly one of the best players in Europe on his day, but last campaign was not his best. And I'm not saying 11 goals, 8 assists in La Liga is poor, but when you stack it up against Kylian Mbappe's numbers, I think they're dwarfed in nearly every aspect. And the issue Vinicius has got is that I don't see how Mbappe and Vinicius work in the same team. I saw the experiment of trying to play him on the right. Didn't quite work. I don't think it worked last season. A lot of Real Madrid's success in La Liga came when one of those two was injured and there was a better balance and flow to the side. When that happened, Vinicius looked again like one of the best players in Europe. When the reverse happened, Mbappe looked again like one of the best players in Europe. For me, Vinicius will be kept. I understand that he's one of the 4 or 5 best players in Europe when he's on form. But how does the balance work? We've seen with PSG, Mbappe was probably the best player in Europe at that period. But when they let him go and built a team with balance in forward areas, it's been so much more effective. I just don't look at this Madrid front line and understand the yin-yang. Another player who I think could be sold is Brahim Diaz. I don't see the balance there for him. Personally, I don't see where his minutes come from. You know, they've been very limited in recent seasons. His best ever production was 14 goal involvements in a La Liga campaign. That came 2 years ago. It's been a step back season on season. And yet, he's still put up more minutes under Xabi Alonso so far than Rodrygo. So does he see him as a more versatile option? And certainly that is a big positive in the bank of Brahim Diaz, isn't it? Because you can say he can play on the left, play on the right, he can play as a 10, he can even operate off the front line. He could end up staying, but would anybody be surprised if Brahim Diaz was sold this summer? Another player there's now question marks about, Endrick. Now, he's had injury issues. I can understand that as to why he got such limited minutes at the Club World Cup. But where's his future lie? With the emergence of Gonzalo Garcia, Mbappe going to be playing as a 9 potentially. Where's Endrick's minutes coming from? They were very limited last season. Just 300 in La Liga. So none, really. Barely any starts across all competitions. All sort of last 10, last 15 minutes under Carlo Ancelotti. I think you could potentially look at the loan market. I like the idea of, let's say, Villarreal. They've just lost Tieno Barry, looking for a number 9. Could that be an option? Could one of the Portuguese sides provide an alternative? Because if the minutes aren't going to be there for Endrick, he needs the development. He came in at 60 million euros at 18 years old. He's Real Madrid's youngest ever Champions League goal scorer. If he's not going to get any minutes in this front line, and I saw reports that he could be operating as a right winger, if that's the case, why not just play Rodrygo right wing? Yeah, for me, he's got to have playing time this season. As for Gonzalo Garcia, look, he's going to be kept. It feels like as I sit here today, Xabi Alonso loves him. But there are still question marks about Gonzalo Garcia. It's such a small sample size. Yes, he did it against some of the sides he was coming up against. But look at the quality of opposition they were facing at times as well. Pretty mediocre. No doubt he's a different profile to Endrick, to Mbappe, to Vinicius. He can lead a line a little bit more. He's physically stronger, more of a penalty box instinct. Of course, Xabi Alonso likened him to Raul, so he might end up being kept because he's different. But is he actually a better footballer than Endrick? There are question marks there. That leaves us with Kylian Mbappe, who hit 31 La Liga goals last season. Obviously, he's going to be kept. No way they can sell the ultimate Galactico coming into this campaign. And they shouldn't, because he is a ridiculous freak-level talent. But how do you fit him and Vinicius into the same side? I want Xabi Alonso to answer that question in pre-season at the start of next campaign. Because if we're at Christmas and the balance still isn't there, you've got to ask question marks about one of these two players' futures, and it's going to be Vinny. He's got a contract till 2027. Kylian's is longer. He is the biggest star in this situation. Vinny, I think certainly not this summer, but will have interest in the January window and next summer if that balance isn't right, despite the fact contract renewal talks are taking place. So that's the squad as I see it. A lot of players to be sold. I think a lot of these are younger names with buyback clauses. A couple of loans. Obviously, the two legends in contract exits. The squad still feels a little bit unbalanced. I think it needs another centre-back. I think potentially another game-controlling midfielder and another forward. There's a bit of work for Florentino Perez to do here. So there we have it. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.